My question is kind of acute. What does this mean for the nuclear family moving forward?
Okay, Matt, you want to take a stab at that one since you've spent so much time? What a fantastic job, too. Thank you all.
So what does the question mean for the nuclear family, or what exactly are you asking?
As we move forward, what does this movement, this pathway mean for the nuclear family socially?
Yeah, I think, look, the nuclear family lies at the foundation of human civilization. And I think for a long time we thought that was the most basic thing that we had to fight for and preserve was the nuclear family. But then we realized, and a lot of us realized over the last few years, that actually there's something even more fundamental than that, which is the difference, the distinction, the definitions of men and women. Because if we don't know that, then we can't even have a family. So I think that that's why it's one of the reasons why this question, although we can get some funny answers out of people when we ask it. This is actually like the fate of human civilization actually rests in a lot of ways on our ability as a people to answer questions like this.
Yeah, Ryan, I say I get up every day to go fight for 5 things: faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. And if that is your filter, if you get the responses right on that, if you look at how legislation that comes before us at the federal level, or some of these guys at the state and local level, and you think about strengthening that family, then many things are going to find, they're going to find a way to work their way out, if you will. Many problems will work their way out, but it just shows you the fight we're in to preserve that family and to preserve that family structure in our society.
Yep, that was a better answer. I like that answer better. More succinct.
Jameson County Republican Party, and thank you. My question is, why do you think people get so angry when you ask them what is a woman?
I think there's 2 reactions that we got, emotional reactions. Well, 3. I mean, there were some people you ask and they were annoyed because it was such an easy question. Why are you bothering them with it? Like our friend Don Zucker. But for the people that were stumped by it, it was either they were afraid or they were angry. And I think that a lot of the people that we talk to just on the street, and in the film we only get a small fraction of the people we talk to walking around the street in for these various towns. And what I picked up on was just a whole lot of, not so much anger from them, but fear. They were just terrified. And they would tell us sometimes that, well, we can't talk about this on camera because our lives will be ruined. The anger really came from when we went to the so-called experts. Like we went into the halls of academia. That's where people got angry at us for asking. And I think the reason for that is, especially our friend, the professor is a great example of this, is that he, the way that the relationship is supposed to work as far as he's concerned, in the bubble where he lives, is that he just says things and then you sit there slack-jawed, nodding your head and agreeing with whatever he says. And if you ask any question at all, if you show any skepticism at all to anything that these people say, they get very angry. They take it as a personal affront because that's not the way this is supposed to work. Like, we're not actually supposed to be answering any questions from you people. We're supposed to just talk, and whether what we're saying makes sense or not, you're supposed to simply accept it. So I think that's where a lot of the anger. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, these guys are never challenged. You point out the professor, he's the classic example, and as soon as the conversation did not go exactly the way he wanted it to, it was just, he just unraveled. It was amazing. But the real amazing thing that happened in that particular interview was the fact that Matt was able to keep him in his chair for another 45 minutes after he unraveled. So Matt definitely gets the award for keeping people in the chair that don't want to talk to him anymore for the longest period of time. But yeah, they're not challenged in academia, and he was huffing and puffing, and when he left, he yelled at everybody and told us all to put our masks on, and it was amazing. This guy should be pouring coffee somewhere. I mean, he should be a barista.
He's paid with Tennessee taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, exactly. He should be pouring people's coffee, and yet he holds this prestigious chair position, and people mortgage their homes to send their kids to this college to hear this guy and what he has to say. So hopefully, if there's a byproduct of this film, it's not just talking about this particular issue. people questioning if they really want to send their kids to a place like that.
I will say that I do take I discovered, I didn't know I was this sadistic, but I do take a certain sick satisfaction in knowing that these people are so uncomfortable talking to me and just forcing them to sit there with me for even longer anyway. I did quite enjoy that.
Senator Blackburn, thank you for all that you do. And Matt, thank you. Amazing film. My name's Todd. Why is the left so infuriated with puberty blockers, or infatuated with puberty blockers and the accessibility to these blockers for children?
Why puberty blockers are so important to them is that what do they do? They allegedly, as we heard in the film, they allegedly block puberty, which of course, as we also heard, is sort of it's an inaccurate euphemism because you can't just block it or halt it. It's just you can permanently damage the body, which is what they're doing. But the point is, this is administered before puberty sets in, which means that very young kids are being targeted with this stuff. And what they don't tell you is that once they start the kid on the path with drugs, or even before that, even before we get to puberty blockers, we got the so-called social transition. Even the simple act of the parent saying, "Oh, I'm gonna dress my 7-year-old boy up as a girl, and then we're gonna switch pronouns." Once that starts, they're now on a sort of conveyor belt, and almost all of them will stay on it until they're fed right into the meat grinder of mutilation and surgery and everything else. Once they get on it, they're probably not getting off. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important for the people that are advocates of this stuff to get to the kids very, very young. And one thing that came out in the film also that I think we can't dismiss is the profit motive here. Scott Nugent talks about it. There's billions of dollars at stake. And so you have to think about it. If you have a 6-year-old boy who's confused about his gender, you could just say to the boy, "Oh no, you're a boy, and that's what you are, and that's fine." And that'll probably be the end of it. It's just like a phase, and he'll be fine. But there's no money in that, right? But if you say to the boy, "Oh, what? Yeah, you might actually be a girl. We should really think about this." Now that boy is worth millions of dollars to big pharma, the therapists, the psychiatrists, the doctors, the surgeons down the line. There's a lot of money in it, and I think that's part of the story.
And I think this goes back to the first question, the parental question. By putting these kids on these drugs, you're essentially taking control away from the parents. You're giving it to the state. You're giving it to the doctors. You're giving it to all the other powers that are involved in this. And it is another way to undermine the family.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this and for having this screening tonight. Thank you, Senator, for doing this. My name's Carrie, and my question is this. Oftentimes our cultural wars are kind of a manifestation of what's going on spiritually in people's mind. I saw some of the people that you interviewed, and I saw what I thought were symbols of the occult with respect to tattoos or some of the things that might be on their shelves. As you were asking these questions and interviewing these people, did you have any sense at all that some of this goes deeper than cultural, that maybe it really is kind of a manifestation of what's going on spiritually in these people's lives, or just the spiritual wars that may be in existence in society today? Thank you.
Absolutely, 100%. That's we talked about after a lot of these interviews just the energy in the room sitting with some of these people. It's just you could kind of feel this cold evil coming from some of them, and it was very clear to me that there is something deeper going on than just people who are confused, and that also that's why some of these conversations, what do they devolve into almost immediately? Well, what is truth, right? And whose question was that in Scripture? That's Pontius Pilate's question in Scripture. And so over and over again, I felt like we were talking to Pontius Pilate. Well, what is truth? What is truth exactly? Because what this is fundamentally is, it's an attack on the family. It's an attack on men. It's an attack on women. It's an attack on children. But even deeper than all that is it's an attack on the very concept of truth, of all kinds of truth, moral truth, scientific truth, all of it. And I think that's what lays at the foundation of it.
And last little point on that, I think if we were to believe that as humans, as men and women, that we are created in God's image, this goes directly at that. This is a direct attack against that. It's convincing people, no, you're not made in God's image, actually. Actually, you're kind of a mistake. But you alone can fix that. And it sounds a lot like the Genesis story. Like, no, you have the control to do this. You can change it. and God has nothing to do with it. So yeah, I think this issue in particular strikes me as a very, very direct attack at what's core in all of us.
Hi, the documentary was absolutely amazing, so thank you so much for letting us come out and watch it. I was just wondering, I think it's completely remarkable that such a simple question, what is a woman, can be a huge stumper to some of these great thinkers. And how exactly did you come across this question and figure out that it was such an amazing tactic to speak to some of these people?
Yeah, I think it was, we actually went back on Twitter to find the first time I asked it on Twitter, and I think it was something like 2017. And I don't know what it was, but it just sort of occurred to me one day, and I'd been talking about this gender issue for years before that, but it just occurred to me one day that it's just this really obvious thing that's right in front of all of us. And the reason why it occurred to me is I don't remember what interview I was listening to or something, with a so-called trans woman, which is a man identifying as a woman, and he said the statement that I identify as a woman, and I just thought to myself, well, wait a second, what do you mean by that exactly? What are you actually trying to say? What do you identify as? And I just wanted someone to ask this person that question, like what is that exactly to you? What do you mean by that? And especially when a little boy says, I think I'm a girl. Why aren't we asking the follow-up question to the child of, well, what is a girl to you? What do you mean when you say that? What are you trying to say, right? And it just finally dawned on me that this is the really obvious thing that we're all overlooking, which is an easy thing to do, because when you have an attack on fundamental truth that attacks something at such a fundamental basis like that, it's sort of like they're calling into questions things that are so self-evident that you hadn't even thought to think about them before. That's one of the reasons why I think some of the people we talked to who were stumped by the what is a woman question, like the people in Africa, at first were kind of confused by the question, not because they didn't know what a woman was, but because it's so obvious they hadn't even stopped to think about it. And that's in some way the advantage that the gender ideologues have, is just by kind of obfuscating and confusing us. So that's where it came from.
When we were working on questions, sometimes for hearings, we will look at those things that we think will end up before the court. And as I visited with Judge Jackson, preparing for her hearing, I said, when you come to us at Judiciary Committee, I'm going to ask you about the school board you serve on, the woke kindergarten curriculum that is taught. I'm going to ask you about U.S. versus Virginia with the VMI Women in Military Academies case. And I'm going to ask you about the NCAA allowing biological males to compete against biological females. And the reason for that, and looking at it from a legal perspective, is because all of these issues will end up at the Supreme Court, and they will have their say on this. And I'm one of those, I believe that women's sports should be for women. I believe that women should have opportunities, that they should have these opportunities that many times have only been there for men. And I was talking with a female skateboard champion last week, and she said, we are fast moving to the point that we're going to have two sports divisions, not male and female, but male and co-ed. And the opportunities to compete and win and excel will be removed from women.
I want to get to the question you asked before the movie. What do we do when we walk out the door? And this question has actually landed in Davidson County last week at the most prominent women's high school that my daughters went to, my wife went to, and they asked the question, what is a girl? And they decided that it means anyone who identifies as a girl. And there is a firestorm going on over that question right now. So my question is, as we walk out, what is your advice on the questions that we should ask on how we go forward to deal with this issue that is literally the wave that is crushing us in so many ways, as you've clearly shown in your...
Yeah, I would, a few thoughts. It's obviously a big question, and we were Justin and I were in fact just talking about this earlier today. Where do we go next? What do we do, in this movement? So a few things. First of all, on a personal basis, and this is not small, this is actually really big, that one thing that we can all do as rational human beings who recognize what is true, and we see all this in the movie and we know that it's insane, is that we could just live our lives that way. Like, live in the truth that we all fundamentally recognize. And stop tiptoeing around, because that's what so many of us have been doing. That's how we got to this point. That's the only way we could have gotten here. The only way we could get to a point where there's this pervasive confusion about the basic facts of human biology. The only way it happens is if like 95% of the people who know better are too afraid to say it. And so the most important thing that we can all do on an individual basis is just be normal people and refuse to go along with any of this. Part of that is someone says, my preferred pronoun is this is what I want you to call me. No, I'm not going to call you that. Okay, you're a man, you're a he, that's it. And I know people don't want to, we don't want to hurt people's feelings and everything else. We are way past having the luxury to worry about hurting people's feelings, okay? Because civilization hangs in the balance, I really believe that. So that's on a personal level. Then we have to talk about, well, what do we do on a grander scale? And as far as that goes, I don't have all the answers. We're trying to work on that. What I do know is that there needs to be a nationwide coordinated effort to stand against this stuff. Right now, there are pockets of resistance, of heroic people who are standing up against this. Scott Nugent, is one. People that are around, we ran into some of them in the film, but they're disorganized, they're kind of disjointed, they're spread all around, they don't have a lot of resources and support. What we need is something like the pro-life movement, which for decades was this machine standing up and having ultimate, enormous success standing up against the butchering of children. I think we need something like that to stand up against this form of butchering children. We need a national, cohesive movement against all this. Last thing I'll say, and I'm going to stop filibustering, sorry, is there are clinics and children's hospitals in every state in the country, and hundreds of them, where 13-year-old girls are brought in there and have their breasts chopped off, where little boys are brought in and are sterilized and chemically castrated. And there is nobody outside of any of these places holding a sign or doing anything about it. There should be protesters and picket signs outside of all of these places all the time. But we need organization for that, and so I think that's got to be the next step.
I'm going to come back to that, but let's get these last couple of questions. You all have been gracious with your time. We had more questions than we had thought. So let's get those in kind of a lightning round, and then we'll finish up. Go ahead.
Hi, my question is fairly simple. I'm a Christian, and I believe the Bible is absolute truth. You quoted Pontius Pilate, who said, "What is truth?" And judging from the documentary, you clearly won it. Matt, when looking at the Bible, I drive around Nashville and I see gay flags on almost every church's front door. How do you believe the church's response should be to this agenda according to the scriptures in this hour?
Okay, let's wait until we get the next question and then do this as a lightning round.
Howdy, howdy. My name is Taylor Winston, and as a content strategist, wanted to congratulate you guys on an amazing film. It's absolutely remarkable. I'm a U.S. veteran, mass shooting survivor, 2A advocate, and a new father, most importantly. What kind of advice would you give to someone as we enter this chapter of our culture war?
All right, Matt, take it away for a 1-minute answer.
Only 1 minute, okay, all right. On as far as the churches go, what can churches do? One thing churches could do is like anything at all. It would be great if churches would just do even the smallest little thing. And then To the question about, as a parent, I would say, to me, it's, there's a lot we need to be doing as parents, but one of the biggest things is, please, dear God, keep your kids off social media for as long as you possibly can.
Amen.
And that's going to be a big help.
That is true. And as we wrap up, I just want to thank all of you. I think that right now, as we look at ways to protect our children and protect our families, that it is so important to have people that are going to be bold, that are going to speak out, and that will stand for that absolute truth and not be fearful of that, because I fully believe that with this culture war, we are truly in a fight for the soul of this nation. So I thank you all for the great work that you have done. I thank you all for the support that you give us in the work that we do. And I thank you for caring about this issue and being here to protect this country and be sure we remain the greatest country on the face of the earth. Thank you all so much. Good night.